Steve Witkoff touches down in Moscow as peace efforts between Trump and Putin hit a critical crossroads. In a city cloaked in tension and diplomatic suspense, Steve Witkoff, special envoy to former U.S. President Donald Trump, landed in Moscow early Friday morning with a daunting mission: reignite stalled peace talks and try to bring an end to Russia's brutal war in Ukraine. It's Witkoff's fourth visit to Russia this year alone, underlining how far the Trump-led shadow diplomacy has come and how far it still has to go. This visit, however, carries a different weight. The mood is darker, the urgency sharper. The Kremlin's three-year invasion of Ukraine has shown no signs of abating, despite ongoing back-channel negotiations and even Trump's increasingly public frustration. And as if to underscore the volatility on the ground, a senior Russian military official, Lieutenant General Yaroslav Moskalik, was assassinated Friday morning in a dramatic car bombing in Balashikha, a suburb just east of Moscow, mere hours before Witkoff's plane touched down. Moskalik, who was the deputy chief of Russia's general staff for operations, was reportedly killed instantly. Russian authorities have not officially attributed blame, but the timing of the attack added a sinister edge to an already high-stakes visit. While Moscow reeled from that shock, the violence continued unabated on the front lines in Ukraine. A wave of Russian drone attacks pounded eastern Ukraine overnight. In the industrial city of Pavlohrad, 3 civilians were killed and 10 others injured when a drone slammed into an apartment complex. Tragedy also struck the small village of Yarova, where a guided Russian aerial bomb flattened a home, killing a father and his elderly son as they slept. And in Kyiv, residents are still reeling from what's now being called the deadliest airstrike of 2025. A barrage of missiles on Thursday killed 12 people and wounded at least 90 more, one of the capital's worst days since the war began. The carnage prompted a rare, forceful intervention from Trump himself, who has largely avoided direct criticism of Russian President Vladimir Putin since leaving office. But this time, he didn't hold back. Posting on his Truth Social platform, Trump issued a blunt message: "Vladimir, stop." That post, terse but loaded with significance, marked a shift, at least rhetorically, in Trump's posture toward Putin, whose invasion of Ukraine has upended global politics, tested Western alliances, and led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands. Yet despite the public outrage, the private negotiations remain mired in complexity. Trump's peace push, progress, or posturing. The Trump camp has been touting a so-called peace framework, one that has raised more than a few eyebrows. According to people familiar with the discussions, the plan would involve the U.S. effectively recognizing Russia's control over parts of 4 contested Ukrainian regions: Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia, territory Russia seized during the war and still holds. Even more controversial, the plan would cement Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea, a red line Ukraine has never been willing to cross. At a recent sit-down in St. Petersburg, Putin reportedly told Witkoff that Russia might be willing to drop its claims to the remaining Ukrainian-held territories in those 4 regions, a move Trump later described as a pretty big concession. But that offer, if it was ever formalized, hasn't translated into meaningful momentum. In fact, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has rejected the deal outright, insisting that Ukraine's territorial integrity is non-negotiable. The backlash from Kyiv has been fierce, with officials there accusing Trump of essentially encouraging Putin to continue his aggression in exchange for a few cosmetic compromises. Trump, true to form, fired back. He blamed Zelensky for holding up the deal and warned that without cooperation, Ukraine might soon find itself defending its territory with drastically less Western support. The message was clear: get on board or get left behind. What does Putin really want? For his part, Putin is playing a calculated game. While he's indicated flexibility on some points, he's drawing hard lines on others. The Kremlin has flatly rejected the idea of deploying a European peacekeeping force inside Ukraine, one of the few concessions the U.S. hoped might protect Ukrainian civilians in Russian-occupied areas. Instead, Moscow is doubling down on demands that have long been central to its narrative: recognition of Crimea as Russian territory, lifting of all Western sanctions, and, critically, an end to Ukraine's aspirations to join NATO. In comments Thursday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov struck a cautiously optimistic tone, saying there are signs we are moving in the right direction. He praised Trump's team for understanding the need to address the root causes of the war, code, many believe, for blocking NATO expansion and undermining Western influence in Eastern Europe. But Lavrov also made clear that several specific elements still needed to be ironed out. No timeline was given and no breakthrough announced. The bigger picture, Trump's endgame. There's a growing sense that Trump's real goal may not be peace at any cost, but rather peace on his terms. With a potential presidential comeback looming, a foreign policy win could be a powerful card to play. And Trump has been unapologetically transactional in his approach. If a deal can't be struck quickly, he's ready to walk away. That possibility has alarmed both allies in Europe and many in Washington. With U.S. military aid already slowing, Ukraine may be forced to confront an uncomfortable new reality, one where American diplomatic support, like its arms shipments, could begin to dry up. Meanwhile, as Witkoff steps into what may be the most delicate round of talks yet, he does so against a backdrop of intensifying violence, mounting diplomatic fatigue, and a growing fear that the war in Ukraine could become a frozen conflict, or worse, a forgotten one. For now, all eyes are on Moscow. Whether this trip delivers the breakthrough Trump is hoping for or ends in another deadlock remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, the stakes couldn't be higher, not just for Ukraine and Russia, but for the global order that's teetering